there actually are some Trump Mamdani voters. There are 8 million people who live, 8+ million people who live in New York City. There are just under 5 million who are registered to vote. The total membership of the Democratic Socialists of America, their New York chapter, has maybe 13,000 people. I mean, people have been predicting the fall of New York for probably 200 years now, right? I mean, it's just not a very good bet.
Welcome on into another edition of Tying Together with Tim Boyum. I'm Tim Boyum here with Mr. John McHugh, producer extraordinaire. This week we're going to talk about something close to where you grew up, John.
Yes.
It may think kind of weird why we're going to talk about the New York City mayoral race, but a lot of people are asking who this Mamdani guy is. I went out this weekend and people are like, "Who's this Mamdani guy?" I mean, you're from New York. It's quite a bit of intrigue.
Yeah, it's very interesting. I mean, I'm from New York. I'm from Long Island. Both my parents grew up in the city, so they are both very invested in the goings-on in Manhattan. But, I always hear it from my parents. But this time I have friends, I went to school in Pennsylvania, and most of my friends live around the Philly area. And even they were like, what is going on with this? Like, I can't look away.
I know.
Like, they're 2 hours away, and it's still, it always gets attention, the New York City mayoral race, but it was on another level this year.
I mean, part of it is he's only 34 years old.
Right.
But also this whole democratic socialism thing. And I feel like a lot of people don't really understand what that is. But, I mean, the president called them, I think, a communist at one point.
Yeah, people definitely do not understand what the DSA is at all. They just see socialism and turns off people of a certain age.
Yeah.
And that's, those preconceived notions are a bit unshakable. But clearly, I mean, among a younger generation, it really doesn't mean much.
Yeah. And so part of the reason I wanted to do this week is that a press release came out from the National Republican Party saying that basically if you don't think that Mamdani and Roy Cooper are basically partners in crime in democratic socialism, you're not taking this serious. Of course, Roy Cooper's running for U.S. Senate in North Carolina in 2026. He's the former governor, former attorney general, former state lawmaker. And so I wanted to bring someone on to talk about what this all means, who he is, what he's going to do in office, what is this socialism that he's talking about, and will it impact these races across the country? So boy, do we have a great resource for this, John.
Oh, yeah.
Errol Louis is a born and raised New Yorker. I like to think I'm a smart news anchor, but this guy puts me to shame. He's got degrees from Harvard, Yale, has a law degree as well. Longtime journalist in New York, both print, radio, and since 2010, he has been with Spectrum News. He's my counterpart in New York City. And by the way, John, pretty fun little thing he had happened to him right after the election with Saturday Night Live.
Yeah, just a little bit.
Just a little bit. Wow. That'll be a fun part for the end. So anyways, Errol's a great dude. I've worked with him for, 15 years now. So there's no one better to talk about this. So here is Errol Louis. Errol, first of all, man, it's really good to see you. Do you feel refreshed? I mean, what's it been like covering this race?
It has been quite a lot of work. We put in a lot of time. We probably put in the most time trying to get ready for the debate.
Yeah.
We had a 90-minute debate, and it took place about 100 hours before early voting began. So it was very, very high stakes. It was really the last chance to try and get the candidates on the record on some really important issues. So there was a lot at stake. We knew that it was going to have a huge viewership because it was simulcast on public radio and on C-SPAN. So, we spent quite a lot of time trying to get that right. And then from there, it's just a roller coaster ride. You just have to chase the candidates every day and try and stay on top of it.
The New York mayor's race is always a big deal. I mean, it's it's New York City for goodness sakes. But did this feel different or no? I mean, how many mayor's races have you or how many mayors have you covered? I don't want to age you, but
well, I've covered the last 6.
Okay.
So the first mayor, I was a Cub reporter, and it was Ed Koch back in the mid 1980s. So. Yeah, and after that was Dinkins, and then Giuliani, and then 3 terms of Mike Bloomberg, 2 terms of Bill de Blasio, and one term of Eric Adams. So I've seen quite a lot of these. I will tell you that they're all unique, or to put it another way, they're all identical in that something very unusual happens, and you can't predict what it's going to be. So, for contrast's sake, back in 2013, there were probably 8 or 9 viable candidates running for what at the time was an open seat. One of those candidates was Anthony Weiner. So there was a lot of craziness and scandal going on at the same time as we were just trying to keep up with the sheer workload of chasing half a dozen viable candidates.
So, all right. So even in North Carolina, just this, like yesterday or today, we got a press release about our U.S. Senate race comparing Roy Cooper, the Democrat, to Mamdani. So obviously this has become this big national thing, especially with the socialists and whatnot. Let's start from a basic standpoint. I mean, you spent time with him with the debate and interviews. What should North Carolinians and the people around the country know about who this guy is?
Well, the bare bones of his biography actually do kind of tell the story. He is the son of a professor and a filmmaker. He's a very young man. This is the youngest mayor we've had in more than 100 years. And there's only one who's been younger. And that's it for all, 400 years of New York City history. So yes, we are about to turn over the management of the largest city in the country to someone who has served about 5 years in the state legislature in the lower house, who's not quite a freshman, but a very young junior assemblyman. The thing I think to know about him is that he was a political organizer, and so there's a generational story that is emerging here, where a lot of young people who were maybe involved in Occupy Wall Street, who were involved in a lot of different movements, a lot of urban environmental movements, civil rights movements, labor organizing. A lot of those currents have been sort of bubbling here in New York City, and he was involved in a lot of it as a street organizer. And so, the young people have said collectively, they're just not interested in the political establishment that has failed them over and over and over again. And he was really pretty explicit about that, So there actually are some Trump Mamdani voters.
Wow.
We have identified some. We've interviewed a handful of them, and you can find the geographic areas. And look, it stands to reason. If you are part, for whatever reason, of a group that feels slighted, ignored, disrespected, maybe ripped off economically, and the political establishment keeps telling you, hey, let's just do the same thing one more time, sooner or later, people run out of patience. And so, the same way the election of Donald Trump in 2016 was kind of a primal scream of the sort of the rural working class, the election of Zohran Mamdani is the primal scream of a generation that is sick of being told to wait and that things will suddenly get better if they just work a little bit harder. People who here work very, very hard. They keep crazy hours. Most people who have come to the city came because they were very ambitious and really wanted to make it in the arts or in finance or in whatever their chosen field is. And we have collectively not opened enough doors for them.
So do you think it's more about a movement and a youth movement than it is about this whole democratic socialism then? It's more about him and not necessarily exactly what he wants to do?
Well, there are 3 tributaries. I started by telling you about sort of the biggest one that I think is the most meaningful one, but there are 2 others. One is in our city of immigrants, and about 40% of the people in New York City were born outside of this country. But there are some immigrant groups that have not traditionally had a lot of prominence in the political leadership. And we call them South Asians, but it's really a number of different countries, Indians, Pakistanis, people from Bangladesh, people from Nepal, people from Sri Lanka. There are a lot of them here. There are like a lot. And they have not traditionally been seen in a lot of ways. They haven't been organized. You certainly find a lot of them working, toiling away in the hospitals or as orderlies, as security guards, maybe sweeping the sidewalk, maybe taking care of people's kids as a nanny. But driving cabs for sure. But nobody ever reached out and really tried to organize them. And Mamdani did that. And that's one important base. And then there are the Democratic Socialists of America. But look, for perspective's sake, there are 8 million people who live, 8+ million people who live in New York City. There are just under 5 million who are registered to vote. The total membership of the Democratic Socialists of America, their New York chapter, has maybe 13,000 people. And I think it doubled or tripled as Mamdani was sort of gathering steam. So it's not a commanding movement. It's not the norm. It's outnumbered by any number of large democratic organizations or labor unions. Vastly outnumber them. But they have been focused, and they're the ones who have really led the charge in a lot of ways strategically on this question I've been talking about. The young people who lived through the mortgage meltdown in 2008, who brought Occupy Wall Street down to the, basically to the foot of Wall Street and said, enough of this economy is not working for us, who have lived through a lot of the Iraq war and the Afghanistan debacle. They've just seen our institutions fail them over and over and over again. And now we're in a city where the average rent in Manhattan, the median rent, meaning half above, half below, for even like a 1 or 2 bedroom is $5,000 a month.
That's crazy.
And so they're saying you can't have average rent of $60,000 a year when the average wage is something like 75,000. Like it's not like you can tinker with it. You have to really just fundamentally rework it, is really what they've been saying.
But the national press is going to focus on the socialism and government-run grocery stores. I mean, I think the president's called him a communist. So how do you think he governs then? How does this translate to the actual governance of the city once he gets in?
Well, I mean, some of it I think he's going to have to ignore, frankly, because the narrative is so far from reality. Like government-owned stores, for example, he's proposing 5 in all of New York City. And he's proposing them in food deserts, and he's proposing it as a way to help people who can't get good, cheap, or healthy food. I'm sure you have food deserts in North Carolina, and there have been a number of government initiatives. I don't know if North Carolina's done it. I know some other states have, to try and do exactly that, like just make the food available. There are plenty of examples already. It's not a crazy or radical idea. Did you know, for example, Tim, every liquor store in the state of New Hampshire is owned by the government. They own the whole thing. It was famous when I was going to college in Boston that people would make a New Hampshire run. They would drive over the border and buy some booze at the government-owned store because it was a lot cheaper than in Boston, and then they would come back with the beer or whatever it was. It's not a wild or radical idea. There are government-run markets. In fact, there's 6 of them in New York City. The city owns markets and sort of invites vendors in to come and sell their wares. Anyway, these proposals, there's really much less than meets the eye. I think their power, though, other than childcare, which actually is a very serious and expensive proposal that we've already instituted and are now trying to expand. There are a number of other jurisdictions around the country that have done this too. That can save a family $10,000, $20,000, $25,000 a year if there's guaranteed childcare and early education available, preschool, for at government expense. That's significant. That can help a young couple stay in the city when they might not otherwise have been able to. But many of the other things, freezing the rent, well, that's temporary. The expenses there's no freeze on the expenses, so somebody's going to have to pay for the upkeep of those buildings. Similarly with these demonstration food outlets that they're talking about putting in place, it was really more the power politically in it was symbolically saying, I hear you, I hear your primal cry for something on affordability. I don't have a lot of power to change it, but I'll do what I can. That's really what the political message was.
So do you think it'll be almost? There's nothing normal about New York City politics, but will it feel like a normal administration, just a new generation and style? Then it won't be as radical. You're hearing state of Florida trying to recruit New Yorkers down because this is the downfall of the city. Is it gonna be just another administration? Do you think?
Yeah, in some ways, yes. I mean, people have been predicting the fall of New York for probably 200 years now, right? I mean, it's just not a very good bet. I saw at least one thing on social media where they had a string of people, mostly on Fox News, year after year after year after year for the last 10 years saying, oh, everybody's leaving New York. And yet we're at record population. If we were a separate state, it would be the 16th largest state in the country. There's a $1 trillion gross municipal product. There's $1 trillion worth of economic activity here every year. I've talked with many of the CEOs, some of whom are personally billionaires. And what they all say is what keeps this place going is the flow of talent that really ambitious, smart scientists, artists, activists, whoever, they all come here and they power the city, and they make it go. That's why so many, art forms have just, emerged out of here, whether it's hip hop or bebop or, electric folk music back in the day. This was the place where a lot of that happened. Punk music, salsa, all invented here. But the thing from the outside that people are going to focus on is this guy has, socialist leanings, proclivities, whatever, affiliations. I'll tell you, going back to the generational question, Tim, at least in New York, it doesn't land the way it used to. I mean, I'm old enough to remember the actual Cold War when there was a Soviet Union. And saying you were anywhere near socialism or anything like that would be the kiss of death in many ways. It's just not the case anymore. When you talk to young people like Zohran Mamdani, born in 1991, they have no memory of what any of that means. That you can call him red, and you can say, there was a cover of the New York Post, the local newspaper, after he won, of him holding a hammer and sickle. Most people, if you're under 40 years old, you have no idea what that means. So I think he's going to ignore a lot of it, and ultimately, and I'm sure about this, he will be judged, no matter what anybody in the outside world says, he will be judged on whether or not the garbage gets picked up, the police respond when called, and whether the schools are bringing kids up to grade level. Everything else is just commentary.
What about the rest of the council? How do you think they're going to react with him and getting things done?
We have a majority woman city council.
Interesting.
For the first time in 400 years, it became a majority woman council just a few years ago. And this has been the first election since then, and they have held that majority. So they are going to be very progressive. They tend to be. There's strong representation from a lot of different communities. A lot of representatives are from communities of color. They have some ideas. The general flow of things in New York is that the council proposes things that are maybe not that practical, and then the mayor tries to put some shape to it or vetoes them and shoots them down. But there's no real big agenda here other than affordability right now. I mean, if the government can't deliver affordability, the mayor, the council, and everybody else are going to be in danger of just getting swept out.
Yep, and that's anywhere up and down the ballot, no matter where you live, no matter what part of you're of. The White House has been paying attention to this. There's a guy that lives there that has a certain proclivity for New York City as well. How do you think this plays out? And I mean, is there fears that one big thing happens crime-wise, and then they try sending in troops? The general consensus here is that the troops are coming, whether anything happens or not. They already sent ICE agents to do a really clumsy, dangerous, and chaotic raid on our street happens to be Canal Street. Every town has one where there are a lot of street vendors who are peddling stuff on the street. They came down under the guise of it being some kind of illegal activity that they were going to enforce, although they really have no jurisdiction whatsoever. People on the street started to interfere with it.
People on the street started calling them out, calling them names, telling them to go home, telling them they weren't wanted. We're really going to be in for it. New York City, the town of Donald Trump's birth, of President Trump's birth, has rejected him not once, not twice, but 3 times, like decisively in 2016, 2020, and again in 2024. And by decisively, I mean 75%, 80% plus Democratic. Even, our registration is overwhelmingly Democratic, but even more so, the vote just went against Donald Trump, including right near Trump Tower. But for whatever reason, he can't kind of let go of the idea that he has something to teach the city or that he understands better how to govern the city. It's going to be tricky. It's going to be tricky. And now he's got exactly the kind of antagonist that a prominent media figure like President Trump really relishes. He can call him names. He can do all kinds of different things. And frankly, the federal government controls a lot of the purse strings that this mayor or any mayor has to rely on. So the stage has been set for a pretty nasty clash. My hope is that it won't hurt ordinary citizens too badly.
What do you think from I mean, you're in the thick of it. What do you think about him being sort of this boogeyman for Republicans? Like, I mean, he's being brought into North. I mean, can it be effective? Or, to me, I think it's interesting. Roy Cooper's been in office here, or isn't now, but had been since the 80s. And then to try to put him up against this 34-year-old as like his best friend from New York City, I don't know if it's going to stick, but they're going to try it, right?
They're gonna try it, and then when it fails because it's absurd and it's not true, the fallback is, well, Roy Cooper's afraid of somebody like one of Mamdani's allies coming down here. They're afraid of the left wing. They've tried this with Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, who got elected here in 2018. I don't think anybody seriously believes that she controls the Democratic Party because she doesn't. She's who she is. Same with Mamdani. He's who he is. I think, by the way, that it can easily backfire on the people who are attempting this, because if you go around spreading the idea that, oh my God, this guy wants to make your rent cheaper and wants to make it possible for you to have early education for your kids at no cost, a lot of people start to say, well, you know what? Maybe that's not such a bad idea, just like with Bernie Sanders. He finds support in sort of some of the strangest places, because what he's talking about is, there's a populist edge to it. It's not like Mamdani came in with this agenda. The way he did it actually is interesting to him, and he filmed some of this for his early commercials. He went out and did what we in media would call a man on the street interview, where he went to the area of New York City that had voted for Trump, found Trump voters, and asked them, with the cameras rolling, with a microphone, he said, what are you most concerned about? Oh, I can't pay my rent. Oh, what do you think about the idea of a rent freeze? Oh, sounds good to me. That's how he developed his program.
Yeah. So do you think that this is the beginning then of for 28 for Democrats then? This we're talking about this generational change, and AOC has some of that too, and I know people think she might run for president. Is it a new part of is that a way for them to get young voters out for Democrats for 28? Thinking of the presidential race.
It would make sense to do so, but I think, what was it, 3 or 4 Democrats died in office last year? I think these guys just don't want to leave. The generational change is happening, and I think Mother Nature is going to basically see it through. I mean, the reality is that there are a number of power centers that are the Democratic Party. You know that. You and I have been to conventions and stuff together. Yep. People say, oh, the Democratic Party, the Democratic leadership. It's not like some hierarchy where they have like one meeting and one person is clearly in charge. It's a number of power centers. There's the labor unions. There's some of the activist groups. There's the environmental organizations. There are the tech billionaires. There are the industrial billionaires. There are, and there are the elected officials. I think the real fight is going to be over 2026. If the Democrats retake the House and or Senate, that particular cluster, the elected officials, that cluster within the Democratic Party, I think then becomes kind of the leading agent. And everybody else has to follow along. But make no mistake, the mayor of New York City gets a seat at the table, representing not just New York, but cities in general.
Well, and I'll be interested to see who plays him on Saturday Night Live. Speaking of Saturday Night Live, someone played you recently. What was that experience like? Were you actually watching, or did someone text you, or?
I was asleep, actually. I was visiting my son that weekend at college, and my wife and I had gone to bed, and I woke up in the middle of the night. I start, doing my little Wordle, and I noticed my phone is blowing up. And I looked and I went and found the video and stopped, as I was watching it. I was thinking, and by the end of it, it's like, look, thank God they did not ridicule me. I was used as part of their comedic device, but I was what they call the straight man, my character, whatever. But it was startling. And, they worked very, very hard on that show. They got our logo, the lighting, the wardrobe down to my pocket square. It was just picture perfect, as they're, ridiculing all of these candidates for mayor.
Yeah, for those that don't know, when you moderate a debate, the last thing you want to be is in the news the next day, right? So I would be the exact same way you are. But I mean, a legend. Keenan's a legend to play. I mean, that's pretty neat, though, right?
Keenan Thompson. Well, I'll tell you what, it's the second time this happened. I was part of the presidential debate in 2016.
Yep.
Last debate between Bernie Sanders and Hillary Clinton. And they did a whole extended thing that included, Larry David playing Bernie Sanders, but they stuck me, Keenan Thompson playing me as one of the questioners. But back then it was kind of goofy. It was kind of buried. It was like, I'm Errol Louis and I'm going to ask the black question, which is kind of silly. This time though, like I said, straight off the top, spelled my name right. Keenan Thompson, by the way, is not bald. So, I mean, think about the amount of detail they put into this.
Yeah.
It's really extraordinary.
Help get you some more street cred with your son, or?
I hate to tell you this, Grandpa, but Saturday Night Live is not what the cool kids are doing on Saturday
man.
night.
Everything about this makes me feel, 91, he's born, Mamdani, like, oh man, nothing makes us feel older and older, right?
Well, you know what? In all seriousness, he did think it was kind of cool, but part of why I went to visit him was to get his early vote ballot and bring it back to New York.
Oh, wow.
He's old enough to vote now.
That's incredible. One last question, because I know you got to get going here. Andrew Cuomo, is he done?
I don't think so. I mean, just there's certain kind of movies where until the credits are rolling, it's really not over, right? There's certain characters who just keep coming back again and again and again. He's been involved in New York politics since 1977.
Wow.
And he's not done until he says he's done. There are always people who will respect that name. He knows how to raise money. He's got a loyal base of followers and of, retainers, former employees who work for him or for his father, who was a 3-term governor. So he's got everything he needs to. He personally made $5 million last year. I mean, he's got money, manpower, and name recognition. And, as you know, that's enough to get almost anything started.
Yeah, politicians, man, they got 900 lives. They don't got 9 lives. It's pretty amazing. Errol, you're busy, man. I appreciate it. It's good to catch up with you. Thank you for letting our listeners kind of in on this. Appreciate you.
Thank you, Tim.
If you want to keep up with what's happening in North Carolina politics and hear more conversations with people shaping our state and beyond, check out the Tying It Together YouTube channel in the description. Hit subscribe and let Spectrum News be your resource for balanced, in-depth political coverage, elections, and issues that matter to you.